All right, let's bring in Sean Hannity, host of Hannity Live from Hanoi, Vietnam, was there at the press conference and is reporting live, has been there all week. We wanted to ask Sean what he thought of this decision for the president, saying it's not a good deal and walking away. Sean, was this a success or was this a disappointment?
You know, it's interesting because the president was very clear. By the way, morning, guys. Thank you so much for having me. The president was so clear all week in telegraphing that he doesn't want to rush this, that he prefers a good deal, and if it takes time, it takes time. And you know what's really funny, and I see this about the news media all the time, is they would just maybe take a little bit of time and try and understand President Trump a little bit more. Maybe they could read The Art of the Deal, because I think one of the best-selling business books in history. And what does he say in there? That if you want to be a great business person, up to the last second in any deal, you got to be able to stand up and walk away and not want it too much. And what the president said is Chairman Kim Jong-un was willing to give a lot and literally knock out his biggest facility. He wants the sanctions lifted badly for his country. But unless we have full denuclearization, the president won't do a bad deal. That's a good thing for the American people. We have a history of this with Ronald Reagan and Reykjavik. So my prediction in the end, I think it's going to work out very well because the relationship has been built and it takes time.
Well, their country has no history of cooperating with us. And the president says sometimes you just have to walk. Sean, it wasn't even close. Denuclearization, no. One plant will take apart, which they promised before. In turn, lift all the sanctions. That's why the president is not having lunch today. No. It's not even something he had to think about. So I think maybe they're jarred. I don't know, because I can't tell you about North Korean culture, because he got up, walked, and he's gone. Here's what he said to you a short time ago.
Well, and we're working towards something, but we didn't sign anything today. It didn't quite work out. I would say that I wasn't satisfied, and perhaps he wasn't satisfied. Good relationship, but I decided that this wasn't the right time to sign something. So we'll see what happens over a period of time.
Sean? You know, Brian, here's the thing. Think about, let's go back to Singapore, because think of all the progress that was already made, and these are not insignificant things. It's been over 400 days, no more missiles as they were regularly happening, being fired over Japan. Guam is not being threatened. The continental United States, if you remember, Kim Jong-un was talking about, oh, we can fire here. Go back and look at the media coverage at the time. It was, he's going to start a nuclear war. Little Rocket Man, fire and fury. My button's bigger than yours, and our button actually works. Amazing that led to, let's see, hostages released, no missiles being fired in over 400 days. The remains of our heroes from the Korean War. And at this point, the president even said we had a deal on paper ready to sign. But it really wouldn't make sense, would it, not to have full denuclearization?
Well, and Sean, you know the president. He wanted a grand deal. And unfortunately, as we have seen for decades from North Korea, they'll give a little and expect a lot. They said, okay, we want all the sanctions taken off of us, Mr. President. And the president said, okay, great, what do I get? And he said, well, we're going to denuke parts, not everything. And in fact, the president even revealed at a press event that apparently our intel community knows
Steve,
of secret places. Go ahead.
I got called on in the press event, which was pretty fun. It was a pretty big crowd in the press room, and I got to ask another question during that press conference. But this is who Donald Trump is. If you think back, remember, I kept predicting that the president, for example, would declare the national emergency as it relates to, or declaration of emergency as it relates to the border. Why? Because the president was saying it repeatedly publicly. The president has said over and over again throughout his life and career, and I've known him well over 2 decades, that he's going to walk away from a bad deal. The only deal that really makes sense for the American people on such a serious, significant issue, something that will impact the entire world, create more safety and security, denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, protect our allies in Japan and Guam and even China in many ways, and the continental United States for our kids and our grandkids. The deal has to be right
Sean,
for the United States.
Sean, did Chairman Kim overplay his hand? He got the president to go to Vietnam, and then ultimately, when they're sitting across the table, it's no dice.
Well, but think of it this way. In my opinion, when he says, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't willing to talk about denuclearization, that's pretty amazing. I don't want to give it away, but I asked the president, because remember he teased that they had this dinner the night before, and the president says, well, I hope he says what he said at dinner.
Right, the dialogue.
But I'll let him say that. He gives me that answer. And it's something that I think, the idea that people think that we can solve what has been a problem that he inherited. Now, go back to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton tried to bribe Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il. And, Bill Clinton, this is a good deal for American people, and we're never going to see nukes, et cetera. Right. It didn't happen. Very similar, I think, to Barack Obama dropping $150 billion in cash and other currency on the tarmac for the mullahs of Iran that chant death to America. And when you look at Reagan, and I see a lot of similarities, and Reagan walking away from Reykjavik and the media's reaction and the liberal reaction to Reagan, which was similar, but I think Trump has it a lot worse. It was, this is a disaster, and it ultimately worked out for something that people never thought could happen.
Right.
Think of the similarities. Evil empire. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Reagan's own advisors pulled it out of the speech at least 10 times, and he personally put it back in, and he did it. And at the end of the day, walked away at Reykjavik because of strategic defense, and we got what we wanted, and that was one evil regime that collapsed.
Sean, do you think that will happen here? Do you think that, you were going to predict?
Ainsley, it's a great question, and if I had to predict, the pressure on Kim Jong-un economically, he needs those sanctions lifted. I think the president knows that and understands that.
Right.
And my guess is that he was probably testing the president and his resolve, and the president showed the strength that I think that Americans would want. Either get what we want or no deal.
In fact,
that is smart negotiations and tough negotiations.
This is another segment. You're going to have the whole interview. You got the only interview out there, and the president since left and is heading on his 8,000 miles.
That's because you didn't want to fly out here, Brian. You could have flown.
And think about the miles I would have got.
26 hours, wheels up to wheels down. And where's Brian Kilmeade?
Sean,
at the Super Bowl. That's where I see you.
Well, the problem is my plane's being fixed right now, and I didn't want to fly with other people. You know my deal. So there's that 8,000-mile journey.
Don't worry, I went through JFK like you would think.
Oh, really? I wonder what that's like. So let's talk about another segment of your interview. Here you're talking about what Kim Jong-un wanted. Listen.
Well, they wanted to denuke certain areas, and I wanted everything. And the sanctions are there, and I didn't want to give up the sanctions unless we had a real program. And they're not ready for that, and I understand that fully. I really do. I mean, they spent a lot of time building it, and that doesn't mean the world has to be happy. But I wanted them to denuke.
And they weren't ready. Sean, the other thing that has to happen, I think it's great that the president walked away because it's a deal he had to walk away from, but they got to tighten the sanctions again like when we were in the Rocket Man stage, because the Russians are breaching it, the Chinese are breaching it, and the South Koreans have a major announcement on Friday to bring the two Koreas closer together. So I think behind the scenes, he's got to bring the hammer down. Don't you agree?
You know, it's interesting because I think the president could have taken two approaches today. And one approach could have been, okay, we're going to double down on the sanctions. But the president's also telegraphing another message, and that is there's a great personal relationship. When we started the show last night at 9 Eastern, 9 a.m. here in Vietnam, it was interesting. There was a casual, jovial even lightheartedness even that you could see. There is this relationship that the president keeps talking about between the two of them. And I don't think it's really any different than when you are doing a business deal in life. If you build that relationship and that trust over time, you can move deeper and deeper into more successful negotiations as things go along. I think we're going to see that here. Listen, I give my opinion, as everybody knows, and I'm very happy for the country in this sense. I really believe in this concept of peace through strength. Trust but verify. This deal would have to be verified. It would have to be complete. We would have to have access, inspections, any place, any time. And I think ultimately we get that. But the idea that we get a deal just to say we got a deal, well, it didn't work out well with Kim Jong-il. It didn't work out with the Iranian mullahs, and trying to bribe them, thinking that if we kiss your you're going to like us. So I think at the end of the day, what would we prefer? A deal for deal's sake, or a deal that is deep and profound and really we have a transition to a safer world? At the end of the day, the fact that the president will fight for future generations and not having a country destabilizing the world and threatening the continental United States, it is too serious to get this wrong. And to wait and be patient, to me, is the right strategy in every way.
Well, we'll be patient to see your entire interview with the president tonight on Hannity. Meanwhile, you also
no, Steve, you're not going to be up at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I am.
Because you guys are in an hour early today.
I'll just be coming in from the clubs. Price Club.
You'll be coming in. No, Brian goes to bed at 7 o'clock so he can do Fox and Friends, 3 hours of radio, then Outnumbered, then the 5, and then fill in for Tucker.
Hey, Sean.
Brian doesn't get enough airtime. That's what I'm thinking.
Wow, this has been an attack on me. This is really taking a twist.
Absolutely. Listen, it's a credit to you. I mean, I think you'd be on 18 hours a day if you could.
Listen,
your guys' show's done so well. We're very proud of you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Somebody who was on for 9 hours on television was Michael Cohen. You actually asked the president about Michael Cohen yesterday. There he is being sworn in front of the House Oversight Committee. Keep in mind, they had to work out his testimony yesterday before he went to prison in 2 months. Nonetheless, and one of the reasons he's going to prison, lying to Congress. Here he is as he started the festivities yesterday, and it was something to see.
I am sorry for my lies and for lying to Congress. I have lied, but I am not a liar. Donald Trump is a man who ran for office to make his brand great, not to make our country great. He had no desire or intention to lead this nation, only to market himself and to build his wealth and power.
Well, we learned yesterday that Michael Cohen, not a great guy, but he's trying to be a better person now that he's decided to come out and ruin the president.
You know, what's really sad, and I think we all interviewed Michael a lot during the campaign. I know I did on radio and TV, and I got to know him. He apologized for once. His attorney in court said I was his client. That was never true in any capacity. He apologized to me, and I did appreciate it. But when you think of what Michael did say, and the president said, well, 95% of it was a lie, but it's interesting that what he said about the dossier, that it was false, and I know from my relationship with Michael, I can confirm that was false. He never was in Prague. I knew where he was the weekend in question. When he said there was no collusion or no evidence of collusion, that helps the president in many ways. You know, the fact that he now has a different point of view is fine, but I felt on a personal level, having known him, to watch the Democrats now under oath put him in legal jeopardy, where as a result of this, there will likely be 2 criminal referrals on top of what this man and his family have been through. How anybody could put him in that jeopardy is unimaginable to me. But their hatred of Donald Trump, this is what I saw yesterday, and I think this is important. So we saw 2 Americas yesterday, and I think 2 choices for the American people. And elections are always about, okay, when you have a clear choice, I think it's powerful. So on the Democratic side, you got a new Green Deal where they're going to take away Brian's plane and helicopter and car. and we're going to get rid of cows, and maybe we shouldn't have any more children because it's maybe dangerous, and we'll raise taxes to 70%. We'll promise you every single thing from cradle to grave. That's going on, and simultaneously, on the day that the President of the United States is negotiating 20-some-odd hours in the air away for something as powerful as long-term peace, security, and a safer world, and the Democrats purposefully orchestrate this circus that we saw yesterday. It was an embarrassment, but I predict the combination of the new Green Deal and the combination of this circus yesterday will have a tremendous impact. The American people are going to see two very different visions.
Sean,
just like the president's economic and foreign policy success, which is, you know, a lot to tell.
But you asked the president about these conflicting images that are happening while he's trying to make an historic peace deal. Here's what he said.
As far as Cohn is concerned, he's convicted. He's a liar. He's defrauded at a high level. He's got a lot of problems. And, you know, it was very interesting because he lied so much. I watched some of it. I actually was able to watch some of it. He lied so much, and yet he said when it came to collusion, the whole hoax with the Russia collusion, it's just a witch hunt hoax. And by the way, very, very bad for our country because it really stops you from doing what you're supposed to be doing. He said no collusion.
So, Sean, the dossier said that he was in Prague. He was meeting with Kremlin officials. And yesterday we learned he's never even been to Prague. So what does this tell us about the dossier and the whole collusion investigation?
It's interesting because the president addressed it with me and Ainsley in the press conference. It says, and the president said 95% wasn't true, but that 5% about collusion, about the dossier, and about the president was exculpatory in so many ways. There's actually, you can go through a list of all the untruths about Michael Cohen that were said there. I happen to know where Michael Cohen was that weekend that they say that he was in Prague. It happened to be a family issue that he should be proud of as a father. And I'm watching again, and the president, he didn't seem at all concerned in any way about it. But the inconsistencies now, again, lying under oath is a felony before Congress. He was sworn in yesterday.
Sure.
And the Democrats and those that were in his head allowed him to put himself in further legal jeopardy, which tells you a lot about the people that just hated him a short time ago.
But, Sean, it's what he said that got him in legal jeopardy. But real quick, 20 seconds, the president he said the president ran for president not to win, but to market himself. Do you believe that?
Brian, I interviewed him a lot in 2015 and 16. I promise you, Donald Trump doesn't get into anything to lose. He was passionate about winning. That is not true. But in an ironic way, think about it. If he was really in it only for marketing, then there really couldn't have been any collusion, and that he was really just trying to make the Moscow Trump deal that we all knew about anyway a reality. Oh, by the way, you got to tell your producer, Gavin.
Yeah, he's listening.
Gavin, you're welcome. And he knows exactly what that means.
Look at that.
I'm causing trouble, intramural trouble.
Because we always ask you to come on, and we appreciate it when you say yes.
And Sean likes to come on as close to 9 p.m. as possible.
That's right.
You guys do great interviews, and I'm like, oh, really? Can I run some clips? And he gives me 5 seconds. And I said,
but it's a really good
take
5
all the
seconds.
clips you want.
Because we want people to watch our show, too.
That's right. All right, Sean, thank you very much. Have a safe trip back to JFK here.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good job this week.
Congrats on how great your show's doing. #1 in the mornings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you, too.
And we're going to be watching this interview with the president tonight. All right.